Okay, we're going to be working now with activity 2.2, which deals with a series of properties that relate to negative and fractional exponents, as well as understanding the concept of scientific notation and when we use scientific notation. So this particular video is just going to work with you with negative exponents. Negative exponents is kind of a little bit challenging for the students, so we want to make a whole video for negative exponents. Okay, so if you remember from the last activity, a negative exponent means we should raise the reciprocal of the base to the positive power. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that when we have a negative exponent, right, means that we should raise the reciprocal of the base to the positive power. So, in other words, what we're doing right here is this negative n, we are changing it to the denominator, right? And we're making it positive, okay? Very important, okay? If a factor contains a negative exponent in the numerator, so you have to move that factor to the denominator and make the exponent positive. 2 steps. Move it, okay, and change sign. Correct? Now, what happens if now I have a quotient? If I have the negative exponent occurring in the denominator, well, I'm going to do the same two things. I'm going to move it and I'm going to change the sign, okay? Which is the same thing as a to the n. Okay, so basically the two properties are when I have the negative in the numerator, I change the sign and I move it to the denominator. When I have the negative in the denominator, I change the sign and move it to the numerator. Okay, so these are the two properties I want you to remember when we do the problems in page 177 of your book. Okay, so let's start with problem number 1. Again, I'm going to do the problems. You are going to stop, do the evens, and check on the back of the book. Okay, so the first question is what is 2 to the negative 3? Okay, well, negative exponent, if it is as a number 2 to the negative 3 divided by 1, then I'm going to move this to the denominator and I'm going to change the sign. 2 steps. Move it. I'm talking about the whole expression is going to be moved to the denominator. Move to the denominator and right and change the sign. Change sign. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be more general. I'm going to say move it and change the sign. Okay? And you're going to understand that move it is just, if it's in the numerator, I'll move it to the denominator. If it's in the denominator, I'll move it to the numerator. Okay, so now right here, I get my 1. Okay, so the answer is 1 divided by 2 to the third, which you all know is 8. So that's the answer for number 1. Okay, what about problem number 3? What do I have in problem number 3? Number 3, I have a to the negative 3. Okay, well, this is easy, right? So I'm going to move it, right? I'm going to move it to the d, and I'm going to change the sign. Okay, so that's the answer. What about number 5? In number 5, I have 4y to the negative 2. Please note that this negative 2 belongs to y, not to the 4. Okay, so the 4 stays, and I'm going to say, okay, look at that negative 2, y to the negative 2. That means that this y to the second should go to the denominator. Okay, so the answer to this whole thing is 4 divided by y to the second. Okay, so we're going to apply the properties of exponents to expressions with negative exponents, just in the same way I did in my problems that I had in activity 2.1 at the start of the activity. I want to go to page 178, and we're going to do some of these problems, but remember, these problems are to be examples of dealing with negative exponents. Okay, so let me start working with page 178 with problem number 7. In problem number 7, I have y to the 5th divided by y to the negative 2. Okay? Well, one thing I can do is I'm going to say, oh, please, this y to the negative 2 is negative, right? So I'm going to move it up. Okay, so what happens? What do I get? Y to the 5th stays, and then y to the negative 2 is going to go up, right? The signs are going to change, and it's going to move to the numerator. Now I have y to the 5th divided times y to the 2nd, okay? Now you may ask yourself, why didn't you move the y to the 5th? I don't have to, because the exponent of the y is positive. In this particular case, the 5. Now I have y to the 5th times y to the 2nd, and y to the 5th times y to the 2nd is y to the 7. 5 plus 2, right? So that is the answer for number 7. What about problem number 9? Okay, what is there to do with problem number 9? I have x to the 4th divided by x to the negative 4. Okay, so you may want to say, oh, Mrs. Proctor, I can simplify these two. No, I can't. They are not the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to think, okay, this is negative. That means that, let me write my numerator. This is my numerator. This particular factor can be moved to the top, right? And the sign is going to change. Okay? So x to the 4 times x to the 4th, I copy my x, and I'm going to add the 4 plus the 4 is an 8. And that is the final answer for number 9. Okay? We're going to do problem number 11. Okay? And we have a to the 4th times a to the negative 2 divided by a. Okay? Well, there are many things I can do here. I could start by combining these two. A to the 4 times a to the negative 2 is 4 plus negative 2, right? I'm adding the exponents. Remember, copy the base, it's right here, and add the exponents, 4 and negative 2, right? And then what do I have in the denominator? I have a. Let's see what happens here. 4 minus 2 is 2. So I have to the 2nd divided by a, and a to the 2nd divided by a. Remember that this baby has an exponent of 1, and that would be a to the 2 minus 1, which is 1, and a to the 1 is a. That is the answer here for problem number 11. Okay? Now let's finish this particular property with problems number 13, 15, and 17. Number 13 looks easy, but I understand if you tell me that you don't like the looks of 15. 15 looks very menacing, but we're going to be okay. X to the negative 5 times x to the 2nd. So this book suddenly just comes with a very easy problem in the middle of very difficult problems. They want to make sure that you are reviewing the materials. Okay? So here I'm going to copy my base, and I'm going to proceed to add the exponents. Okay? Remember, you have negative 5 here. Okay? Let me use, okay. So this is x to the negative 3. My bad. Okay? So remember, this is the base, and these numbers right here represent the exponents. Okay? Copy the base and add the exponents. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I want to do problem number 13. Or actually, problem number 13 is done. Let me do number 15. Okay? Now I'm going to write it here. Number 15 looks very big, but it's not any problem. We definitely can do this. okay? And then I'm going to multiply by negative 3, a to the negative 4, b to the negative 1. Okay, so let's see what happens. What I'm going to do is I'm going to eliminate these parentheses, okay? I don't want to have to write them. It's going to be negative 4, a to the second, b to the 7, times negative 3, okay? It's a negative, so I need to keep it in parentheses. A to the 4, b to the negative 1, okay? So let's pay attention here. We have negative 4 and negative 3. Remember that these two numbers are coefficient. Negative 4 and times negative 3 gives me a positive 12. Okay, so since I'm going to be simplified. Okay, now I have a to the second and a to the 4. So you're going to copy the base and you're going to write the exponents. 2 plus 4 is 6. Yes? And then I have b, right? That's b to the 7 and b to the negative 1. That's b to the 7 plus negative 1, b to the 6. Okay? So now I have my answers. 12, a to the 6, b to the 6. Okay? That is problem number 15. So we have the very last problem, problem number 17. And in problem number 17, I have this whole expression 2x to the negative 2, y to the third, right, set to the negative 2 power. Okay? Now, the first thing, I can do many things. I can use the negative property, the negative numbers property, the definition. I can say, okay, this is the same as this whole thing I have here, right? That's the base, right? And then set to the second. Okay, remember you need to change the sign. Remember that if you're moving into the denominator, you're changing the sign. Okay, so now what is there to do? Well, these two right here can just go and change each one of the factors in the denominator. So I'm going to have 2 to the second, x to the second, of course to the second, and y to the third to the second. So I'm going to have 1 divided by what? 4. X to the second and x to the second is x to the fourth, and y is 3 times 2 is a 6. So this number right here is the result of the simplification in problem number 17. Okay, so you need to look at the second activity. I'm sorry, the second part of activity 2.2. The second part is going to deal with roots and radicals, and it's also going to work with fractional exponents of the form 1 divided by n or m divided by n. Okay, so you can now start working with page 179, which is roots and radical notation, after you finish this video.